What is the biggest longest secret you've kept? That my mother was abusive to me as a kid. I kept it for 22 years. I told my dad a few months back. I told him in anger because I blamed him for letting it happen. He truly didn't know the extent. She kept it well hidden. He then explained to me that he tried to protect me from her and he did when he was around. He told me he'd been in an abusive relationship with her. She separated him from every friend and family member he had. She took his entire paycheck and wouldn't let him have a card. She told him he couldn't leave her because she'd never allow him to see me again. My dad's not perfect and he left me in dangerous situations, but he tried at least. And now both of our 20+ year secrets are out to each other. Edit. Thank you so much for all of the positivity and PMS, it's really made me smile today. Not me but my sister. When we were like 7. We would always play hide and seek and she had a hiding spot that nobody could ever find except her, of course. It's been 10 years since and she still hasn't told me. She claims she has a plan to tell me at some point but won't reveal when. So until then I'm hoping neither of us die an unexpected death. Edit. Check out Mirab23's reply to this comment to see my sister's response to this. I loaned a bunch of books from the library in 2001 as a 7-year-old. Found them in my room 3 years later. My 10-year-old mind was convinced the cops would come looking for me cause of it, so I neatly disposed of the books in a manner that will ensure they'll never be found again. Unless someone cleans up the basement. Well, time to visit my parents. I was touring Australia for 6 months with my girlfriend Jen, whose twin sister had lost her son to cot death a few months before we left. Jan was devastated but still really wanted to go to Oz with me. Her twin sis had given birth to a second son about 3 months after the death, and when we left for Down Under the boy was about 3 months old and a big focus of love for everyone after the shock of the cot death. Every week Jan would ring home and talk to her mother. At the end of the second week the mother asked to speak to me. This was unusual. We did not have much to say to each other normally, so I was surprised. It turns out she wanted me to know the second son had been diagnosed with leukemia. But whatever happened I should not tell Jan as it would spoil her holiday. She was right that it would devastate Jan and that she would want to leave at once. And to be honest, there was nothing she could have done even had she returned. So I sat on this awful news for nearly 6 months. To make it worse, her mother told her on our return that I knew about the diagnosis from the start. So it was one of those circumstances where you can never win. My half-brother isn't actually related to me at all. Because my dad's ex-wife cheated on him and got pregnant. Everyone knows but my half-brother that my dad was cheating on my mom. I found out during middle school, beginning of high school, but kept it between my sister and me. We weren't sure what to do. Today my mom found out while fighting with my dad. The secret just came out of me when he walked away and she wanted to go after him. She was first upset that I had been dealing with that for 5-ish years. But later on she started to turn her anger about it towards me. Just laying in bed not sure how to continue. My parents have always fought since I was little and always put me in the middle of it, so I shouldn't be surprised. I shoplifted in Nick when I was 6yo. That was 18 years ago. Well, it's not that big of a secret since it was just a bag of candy that I stole. Yes, officer. This is the guy you've been looking for right over here. It was actually my brother that broke my arm. Not my cousin, by marriage. Not blood. I didn't want my brother to get in trouble or feel bad because I knew it was an accident and I hated my cousin anyway. My classmate in 6th grade is wiping his booger in his table. When I caught him one time, he pushed me to a corner and said in a light voice, "Don't tell anyone." I'm now 20 years old and I kept his secret. I had a workmate who used to wipe his nose nuggets on the wall in an office out the back. I knew it was this particular guy because I was in the office. Left. And returned shortly after just as he was leaving. And there it was. A booger on the wall. Anyway. I laughed at him and he was shocked. I realized it was him. In a new job now. And someone here is wiping boogers on the cubicle wall in the toilet. I really want to know who. Will seem like nothing compared to other people on here, but still. I'm not the fittest person in the world, but I can confidently say I'm more in shape than 90% of the general population. But I've recently come to terms with the fact that I like fat chicks. Not to the extreme, but enough to where people ask me why I date the women I do. Makes introducing girlfriends to my family the most nerve-wracking experience ever. Told my mom I went to the city with some friends. Actually went on a road trip from Sweden to Norway and stayed there for 2 days. She is sitting right next to me as I'm typing this. Wish I had the gonads to go abroad and lie to my mom on that scale. Whenever I tell her I'd love to go abroad, she's always like, only if it's with a friend, knowing that I'm a fully grown adult woman. Which is probably exactly why she told me to go with the only friend I know she approves of. Makes me wish I was born male. Edit. Some of you never grew up with a helicopter parent in a country with piss poor job opportunities, and it shows. When my mother-in-law was in hospice and dying, we had gotten the call that her last rites were being read to her and we should come because it was very close. The family gathered in her room. My father-in-law, her husband of 42 years, had been by her side and hadn't left for days. We were there for hours. My sister-in-laws had to take their kids home at some point. So they had left and it was just my husband, me, and my father-in-law left. The nurses were saying that they might have spoken too soon because she was still hanging on. It was awful to watch. My father-in-law looked ragged and tired and he said he was just going to go to the other floor for a cup of coffee. My husband went with him. I said I would call if something changed, but he was only going to be gone for 15 minutes maybe. About 5 minutes after they left, my mother-in-law really started to have very labored breathing. I called the nurse to see what was happening, and by the time she came to the room, maybe 2 minutes, she had passed. I asked the nurse to wait for me to get my father-in-law and husband back to the room to pronounce her dead. They rushed back and my father-in-law held her, and after a minute the nurse and doctor pronounced. My father-in-law believes he made it back to the room and was holding her while she left this life. I have never told him or my husband. And I'll never take that away from him. My house was raided for child pornography. Agents came through, searched every room, collected every storage device and questioned me. I promptly said I would not talk without a lawyer. My wife was bawling. I told her to not talk without a lawyer. After about 4 hours, all of the agents left with every electronic device. Then they handed me the warrant. Apparently my IP address was detected distributing child porn. After counseling and a lot of communication, my wife and I agreed to not tell anyone about this. Not family. Not friends. No one. We moved from the house because it just made us uneasy being there. After 3 years of fighting with the agency, we finally got all of our devices back. The devices they took were the only copies of all of our photos. So it was one of the happiest days ever. It turns out one of our neighbors was using our Wi-Fi, which had an easy 8-letter lowercase password. Once they didn't find anything on our devices, they did a search of the neighbor. TLDR, use a good Wi-Fi password or bad shit can happen. My sister's cat died during the night a couple days ago. And I'm the one who found her in the morning. I lied to my sister about how I found her. I said she was lying on the ground and possibly had a heart attack, which would explain her eyes being wide open. I couldn't close them. I actually found her trapped under the dining table, hanging between 2 chairs with her front legs, with her head back. She must have fallen and couldn't free herself. She didn't have good control of her claws anymore. She looked like Jesus on the cross, completely stiff from rigor mortis. I was ducking, horrified, and still can't get the image out of my head. It hurts me so much to know that her last moments were of suffering. I now can't ever tell my sister how it really happened. Edit, to slightly soften the story. She was a very old cat, about to turn 20 years old. What was unbelievable was that it was on the morning of the day we had booked a vet appointment to put her to sleep. My sister actually feels relief that she died naturally rather than being taken to a strange place she didn't know. I can't share the same sentiment, sadly, but I'm just relieved that she is relieved. I have a relative who committed suicide. And next to their note, they left a small stack of things they wanted to be buried with. Several days after the funeral, the director of the funeral home called my mom and let her know that sadly, the items my relative wanted to be buried with did not get put in the coffin. It happens sometimes. And he told mom that they try to contact the family member who seems least likely to lose their shit over it. I'm paraphrasing of course. But my mom was the perfect person. The woman is unflappable. Mom went up to the funeral home and they returned the items to her. She told me the story once. And that nobody in the family knew. But that she wanted me to know where the items were in case she passed before she found an appropriate time to give the items to my relative's kids. It was some photographs of my relative with family and friends. And then a wedding ring. The kids were very young so it wasn't appropriate for her to give it to them at the time. It's been well over 20 years. And I don't think she has ever passed the things on. We have never discussed it again. And I haven't ever told anyone. One day I am sure I'll have to have that conversation with one or both of my relatives' kids. But until then, this is the only time I've said anything about it. When I was 15 and my little sister was 6, she erased my 100% save file on Smash Bros. Brawl intentionally. And she played it religiously after that. I constantly heard the music every morning as a daily reminder that all my shit I spent 250 plus hours on was entirely gone. So one day she was yelling at me. She wanted to play Smash but I was playing Re4. Turned into an entire family drama. Had both parents and my other sister screaming at me in the end of the argument. That night, I snuck the disc out. Carved a sizable scratch out of the disc with a screwdriver, pretty much to its foil layer, and stashed it at the bottom of her toy chest. She eventually found it and cried. She continued to rage during gaming though, which gave me a motive against her. She continued to break an iPod Touch and several Wii remotes. 3 years later she put a hole in the wall with a Wii U Gamapad. Now we're 7 years later. They all still think she's the one that broke the disc. Either by mishandling it and putting it into her toy chest herself, or raging at the game and somehow carving into it herself. Only my current girlfriend knows of my immature, frustrated act back then. Even my little sister, 13yo now, says I didn't know how to take care of discs back then. I'm sorry. When I mention it, she's somehow believing my lie herself at this point. That my mom smoked weed up. I didn't bother keeping secret after it got legalized. I'm Canadian. I don't drink, smoke, or do drugs of any kind. I don't have a problem with other people doing it. It's just a personal preference of mine. My mom smoked weed for the entirety of my life. And I didn't realize till I was 13 when she told me because every once in a while I'd catch her smoking and think it was a cigarette. And she wanted to make clear to me she quit smoking cigarettes a long time ago. But yeah, she smokes the dank leaf. It's weird. Going off to school in the morning and passing by your mom, rolling a joint on the kitchen counter. The funny thing though is that my lifelong best friend's mom worked for the police and my mom made me promise to never tell him. Because he may snitch. So I told nobody. Till the day legalization happened, and now when people ask me why I don't smoke weed, I say once your parents grow it in your kitchen, you don't really want to do it anymore. When my mother was pregnant with me, they did an ultrasound and found she was having twins. When they did another ultrasound a few weeks later, they discovered that I had reabsorbed the other fetus. Do I regret this? No. I believe his tissue has made me stronger. I now have the strength of a grown man and a little baby. That my ex-fiancé cheated on me with a coworker. I keep it a secret for almost 3 years. But he did it again. I just found out this afternoon, so I'm about to tell the first coworker's husband tomorrow. Update: husband says he loves his son too much to do anything about it. They have 2 children BTW. Update: I move out tomorrow. That the reason that me and my ex-GF broke up wasn't because we drifted apart, or me moving to a different city for studying. Actually, her mother asked me to stop this relationship because we were from two different worlds. The crazy thing is that I understood it and took it for granted. A decision which I still regret sometimes. My bastard son is actually my sister's, and he is the true heir to the throne. I haven't told anyone, not even my wife, because the king would have had him executed. I have kept this secret for 20 years. And I just hope that if he ever learns this, he won't tell anyone. Someone I know has knocked up their girlfriend. They've only been dating for like 6 months. They are 19 and 20. She's already 4-5 months pregnant. Neither his parents or hers know. And he's never met her parents. Neither have stable employment. His parents are poor and would be financially ruined if they tried to help. She is an absolute freeloader. And quite frankly, both are lazy idiots who try to offload any of their responsibilities onto others. And would make terrible parents. My parents have no idea that I didn't graduate college when I said I did. In the spring of my senior year, I overloaded and took 6 classes instead of 5. In order to graduate on time. My grandmother passed away that semester. And in the aftermath I was so depressed that I barely passed 5 of the classes and failed the 6th entirely. My parents aren't abusive. But I was living with them at the time and they would never have let me live it down. My school let me walk. So I just lied and told them I had finished. I already had a job lined up when I was supposed to have graduated. So I started working. And a year later I took an online course to finish my degree. My parents just think my diploma got messed up by the school. And that's why it was late.